So first of all, everyone, welcome back to another Automazing video. For this one, we have Craig Toone, the editor and founder of Rush Car Magazine. I believe you also describe yourself as benign dictator. Uh,
Yeah.
okay, so first, Craig, please tell us, where did your passion for cars originate?
Wow. I think we've got to wind the clock back at least 35 years for that one. It starts, I guess, with most of us with our fathers. You know, my dad was a petrol head. He was always into cars. He always had like a nice fast car, and I just knew like going out for family holidays and stuff like that. And my dad would be overtaking people, and my mum would be shouting at him, and I just knew it was naughty, and I just wanted a piece of the action basically. And ever since then, I was a petrol head. One of the cars he had was something you didn't get in America. What it's called, you might have heard of it. It's a Cosworth, a Ford Cosworth. So he had
Yeah.
a model called Sapphire Cosworth, and it was like a bit of a blue collar performance car, and it was like the car to have. And I remember he had that, and it just made me cool at school. That's how popular and amazing that car was, you know. So, and then it got stolen the very first night it came home. So,
A bit of
yeah,
reputation.
yeah. That was a very Cosworth thing. They were all stolen by the thieves and taken for joyrides and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it just started from there really, and where everybody else was playing with, like Action Man, He Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Star Wars, I had Matchbox cars, and I was pushing them around,
Mhm.
wearing the racing line into the fabric of the carpet, and drifting them around the coffee table. That's where it started.
I think a personal experience for all of us, definitely.
Yeah, but not much has changed since, to be honest.
um, how would you describe your personal taste in cars?
So I like real world cars, attainable, accessible cars. Um, I mean, obviously, I appreciate the supercars, but like the latest wave of hypercars, I'm sort of not that interested in. Like give me a Porsche Carrera GT any day of the week over like a Rimac Nevera, or I can't even pronounce it. I'm sorry, I probably butchered that, but I guess that shows you how much interest they have in it. Because I just feel like you could still use the performance of these cars, and they've still got the emotion of the naturally aspirated engine, and the noise and the looks as well. I think maybe that was the last true supercar for me. But in terms of what I like is, I love homologation specials. So like the rally cars from the 80s, Group B, and then the Group A rally cars, the road going versions of them. So anything from your Audi Quattro to Mitsubishi Evo just really lights my fire. I love hot hatches as well. I know there's not a big hot hatch thing over in America, but obviously because of the price of fuel over here in the narrow streets, hot hatches they're just the everyman hero car, and they're just so much fun to chuck around because they're so light, and the way they just respond to the driver, I think it's brilliant. Um, it's like you drive anything, it puts a smile on your face. You drive a golf buggy, it can put a smile on your face, can't it? So yeah, so just a small light car with a bit of power, and then I'd probably just, without getting carried away, the last category of cars that really lights my fire is sort of like you really already excellent sports cars. So like take BMW M3, turn it into the GTS, or the E46 CSL, for example, 911 GT3, and probably my favourite of these cars is the Honda NSXR. I think that's
Nice.
just, like, if anybody said to me, "What's your last tank of fuel?" It'd probably go on an NSXR, definitely. So it's just those cars that are already excellent and just sharpened up a little bit. That that if my numbers came up on the lottery, that'd be a garage full of those cars for me.
Definitely, definitely. I
Mm.
know you just mentioned the M3 CSL. Just from reading the mag and seeing the social media content, I can tell you have a bit of a soft spot for CSL.
Yeah,
Story with that car.
yeah. I love that car. Just the noise it makes, and the passion BMW put into making that car, the way the way they really went after the lightweighting and the amount of technology, new technology that had never been seen before, like the carbon roof and the carbon airbox. And I know a lot of people are controversial about the gearbox, but you can drive around it if you know what you're doing. And I just love the way it looks. Those alloy wheels, that little ducktail spoiler, all the carbon parts to it. It's just, it just lights my fire. I can't just, I don't, whenever I drive one, I just never want to get out of it. I really don't. Yeah. Yeah.
For me, it always goes back to the original Clarkson thing on Top Gear about 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
the very last sentence he had, BMW at its absolute best. I
Yeah.
don't think I realized how true that statement would ring, especially
Yeah.
with more values.
Absolutely. I think it was I often compare it to, because I know at the time it got a lot of love and a lot of criticism. It divided opinion, and that was mainly due to the price, which is £20,000 more than the regular M3. But in a way, it was sort of ahead of its time, because like you had the Porsche GT3 was about as well. But if you actually compare what BMW gave you in that car to like the modern day equivalents, like you look at the M4 CSL that's come out, you know what they've done to achieve the power. They've just dialed up the boost a little bit, and they've taken 100 kilos off the curb weight. But in doing that, they've taken the back seats out of the car. They've not gone to that level of investment and engineering that really that mattered. And the CSL was like, the E46 was 110 kilos lighter, famously, than the regular M3, but it was always more than that, because I remember Auto, Motor and Sport did their super test with the regular M3, and I think the difference was actually closer to 150 kilos. Once you throw a few optional extras on, and because you couldn't really put any optional extras on the CSL other than aircon and parking sensors. So, and then the current one is, I just don't see the new tech, the pioneering technology that's 5 years ahead of its time. I don't see that. And just turning up the boost a little bit is, and the price is, what's weird about it is what the CSL did, the E46, was it matched the 911 GT3 around the Nürburgring, and did it for £17,000 cheaper, and it had 4 seats. So the new one can't get anywhere near the GT3, in
Or
terms
the
of
RS. They're a nightmare.
I've seen Kamisa's video. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, obviously it was on 4S tires and not the 2R, but it can't get close to it anyway. So Porsche's,
Because of lower drag, but yeah.
yeah, but Porsche just kept developing and developing, and I think for me now, that if BMW do a CSR, I think it should be the M2 now. I think the M2 is really the
Or,
M3 today. So, but yeah, I'm passionate about BMWs. I think M cars are amazing, and I think they're just like the everyday hero car. They can do it all, can't they? And the M3 especially, and the M5, especially the E46 and E39 M5 cars, so close to my heart, and they mean a lot to me. And I guess I'm one of those old boring people that doesn't like the new BMW grills and the direction they're taking with all the technology. And I always used to love the fact that BMW put a straight six in the car instead of a V6, because it was smoother, and they stuck by rear wheel drive all that time. And it felt like an engineering company. It felt like Honda, how they went the extra mile because you felt like it mattered. And I think that's gone now, and it's a shame,
very
really.
much so.
Yeah.
I think it was the current CEO of Miele who said that we should change CSL from Coupe Sport Leichtbau to competition Sport Leichtbau, which means it's probably going to be an XM CSL,
Yeah.
which is, I think, is just utterly horrific.
I know. I mean, I'm that sad and pedantic that I don't even like the M3 M5 competition name, because I was like, it means nothing to me. I don't understand why they don't call it the Evolution, and offer it as an upgraded package, with cup tires and that little bit of extra boost and suspension tweak, and they can run side by side. But anyway, BMW are building more of that now than ever, so they're probably wise in not listening to me, to be honest. But it's a shame. Yeah,
To an extent, I think that does ring true. Yet on the other hand, I think every brand must be careful not to run too far from what their USP has been,
yeah.
especially of change. I think that that's especially important not to run too far away from it.
I think we're going to see it definitely now with the new C63 going to four cylinders. Um, I think that's a very. I mean, I feel sorry for car manufacturers. You know, we're all enthusiasts. We all love cars, and we all want the best. But they have to fight so hard against legislation and emissions at the moment, and all the sacrifices have to be made for safety. Cars have to get bigger. They have to get heavier. They have to get safer. But what I'm worried, some of these safety things aren't needed, but that's a whole different conversation, I guess. But yeah, well, it's the emissions that's driving it, and I really worry about Mercedes going from the V8 to the four-cylinder model, um, and they've just thrown power at it to try and convince people. Whereas what mattered was the character of that V8. So I think that's a shame, and I think Mercedes might not sell as many just because of that. So time
Definitely,
will tell.
especially AMG people. I
Mm,
think you can differentiate between RS and M and AMG people. The RS people, they love everyday performance, just
mm,
on a beat road that's smashed with rain, just hammer down the road with a four-wheel drive and
yeah,
turbocharged. The M people love the driving experience, at least they used to. And then AMG people were always the utter madmen who love the
yeah,
sound, burning tires going sideways at the roundabout. It's just that was very much their thing, and it's
yeah,
now. So I think AMG might have a bit of a struggle with the new C63, definitely.
yeah. It'd be a shame because as well now is BMW going with the X Drive now is completely muscled in on Audi's patch of being the all-weather everyday supercar. Now BMW's taken that, and now with now with Mercedes dropping the V8, which was their USP. Now BMW's got the straight six, which is going to be seen as superior. So it's I guess the Alfa Romeo's the other alternative, isn't it? Yeah, yeah, love that
For now,
car.
for now. Okay, moving on a bit. What is in your personal stable at the moment?
So I am a bit crazy with cars. I yo-yo between new cars and old cars because I get something new because I'm sick of all the bells of daily driving a classic car and all the wear and tear mounting up, and it cost me how many pounds a month, how many $100 a month to run. So then I'll go and get a new car, and then I get the new car, and I go, I'm bored of this now, and so I'll go back and get an old car. So I guess recent time, I did have a GR Yaris. Initially, I loved it, but eventually, as time went on, I became a bit underwhelmed by it. Um, on emotional side, really, because the car was just so fast, it was so capable. It was amazing when you were driving with your hair on fire, but there was times where it didn't engage you unless you was going Mach 2. It was just so capable and isolated, and you had to tell the car you wanted to party rather than the car going, "Come on, let's have a bit of fun at every opportunity." So I sold that and I got a Renault Sport Clio 200 hot hatch, and that was giving me a bit of trouble. So I did the really smart decision and got rid of an old Renault hot hatch, notorious for unreliability, and replaced it with an even older Renault hot hatch, just as notorious for unreliability. So currently I'm driving what's called the Clio 182 Trophy, and it's a car that appeals to me a lot because I think it's a fourth, maybe fifth one I've owned now of this variety of car. It was like my first true performance car that I could afford the insurance on when I turned 25. And he had a series of them, and they were like a really popular car for the young enthusiasts. I guess like maybe something like Miata might be close in the US maybe, or the GT86, but it's just a car close to my heart, and it's just got this. I know it'll sound weedy, but it's got a 2 litre engine in it, 16 valve, 180 horsepower, but it only weighs 1,000 kilos, so it just picks up instantly. It's not necessarily a fast car. It'll do, you know, 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds, 6.5 seconds, but it feels fast. It feels a lot faster than what it is, and that engine in such a small body feels so muscular, and the chassis is so playful. It's just even every commute, every roundabout, every junction, every turn you take, it's an opportunity, and that's what lights my fire. So yeah, but currently it's off the road because the alternator's broke.
Ah,
So
this
so
is
so at the moment, my what's in my stable is a commuter train. So, but
wonderful.
yeah.
So moving on a bit to Rush now, what would you say has influenced Rush, and what would you say is the magazine's ethos?
Oh, I can't talk about Rush without talking about Evo magazine. Um, those guys are just they are such an inspiration to me. They always have been, and they always will be. And for some people outside of the UK, it's hard to understand what Evo magazine is,
No, but very much in
and
my case, it's
yeah.
I inspiration behind me wanting to be a military writer.
Well, I can actually see Evo there, point on your back
Oh, yeah,
shoulder. So
yes.
it's good to see. It's good to see it getting out. But I used to, as daft as it sounds, like this magazine came out in 1997. So I'd already been reading car magazines for a long, long time since then. But I picked up this magazine, and I just felt like the way they talked and the tests that they did, I felt like they were speaking directly to me. I felt like, and a lot of people say that about the magazine. If anybody listens to like the Chris Harris podcasts and things like that, where he interviews some of the guys, he was saying like the goal was to make them feel like they were part of a club, and you really did feel that you were part of the team, and all the guys had a character, and you would search for who's written the article before you go, so you know what to expect, and you know the flavor and the way they're going to talk about the car, and they did these huge expansive tests that nobody in the UK had ever done before. Like, one time when the Audi TT came out, instead of just going and driving it and doing a test, they bought an Audi Quattro. They just went out and bought an Audi Quattro and drove it to the launch event in Germany, just to do this twin test against it. And then they ended up keeping the Quattro on and running it on the fleet. And they they did these amazing tests, like a Subaru Impreza P1 came out, and instead of just testing it against a Mitsubishi Evo, they was like, right, we know this is going to be a bit of a landmark car, so they got the best 15 cars, brand new and second hand, for the £35,000 list price, and just compared, just had this elimination thing. And then once the P1 cleaned up in that test, because it won it on genuine merit, and it then faced off against a Ferrari 550 Maranello, just for the fun of it, just because they wanted to see, and they had this maverick spirit, and I guess I'm just hugely inspired by that. And what I want to do with Rush is, I know I can't recreate that thing, but it's just that same thing, but with cat, like, because I think unfortunately the way the market's gone now, because Evo covers mostly new cars, and the way the market's gone now is everything's these limited edition, special of a special, and I feel like a lot of people that I'm just a little bit bored of that. And I think there was another magazine in the UK called Modern Classics, that unfortunately shut during COVID. And what they did was cover the cars, like the hot hatches, the hero cars of the 80s, 90s, year 2000s. And I was like, well, that magazine's short. I saw a gap in the market. I was felt like the magazine I wanted to read wasn't quite there anymore. And I've always loved writing, and not a professional by any means, but I just started putting some words out there, and it got a response, and it just gravitated into this magazine that is now Rush, that was digital, and now is about to launch into a print product, which is I'm something I'm very proud of, and it's been an amazing journey, and obviously meeting people like yourself, you've got some words in there, which I think is amazing and great, and I hope a part of it can give opportunities to people that aren't necessarily, because it's so everybody want people want to be a car magazine, but it's so hard to break into the car and the journalism industry, and I basically just got a laptop, Microsoft PowerPoint, and just designed, published this digital magazine, and went from there. I'm using better software now and self-taught. I've no history of publishing, not a graphic designer. Just did a few YouTube videos, got a bit of help along the way, and here we are now. We're just on this massive roller coaster, and it's just brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm not the best person about telling the story, I'm afraid, but yeah, I really, it just puts a smile on my face doing it. And if somebody reads it and they put Rush down, and then they go, do you know what? I'm going to go out for a drive, or they go on Bring a Trailer or Auto Trader, eBay, and look at a car. I feel like that's the biggest compliment we can get, is just inspiring people not to give up. When it's so hard these days with dash cams and things like that. So yeah, I'm going off on a tangent, but yeah, you can tell I've got a bit of passion about it.
I think all of us do have a bit of that passion, both who are already inside motoring media, who are not. I remember listening to a podcast with Will Beaumont, who's the editor of Verco, and
Yeah,
he worked on modern classics and Evo, and he was talking about the inspiration for starting Verco was the shutting down of modern classics. He was thinking about buying it, realized he couldn't, and started his own magazine instead. I think that really was a massive gap.
yeah.
Uh,
Mm.
yeah,
There is a huge, just a black hole, to borrow a phrase from Harry Metcalf, the founder of Evo. There's a black hole on the shelves, and the legacy publishers won't touch it because the advertising revenue isn't there. The whole model is built on advertising revenue, and they won't touch it because the advertising isn't there. So it's down to us cheeky independents, I guess, to try and create something that's good enough to fill that gap. Um, and I think quarterly publishing with a little bit higher fee or higher values, that harks back to that classic high paper quality and longer format articles. Unfortunately, because of the internet, as amazing as it is, I feel like articles are shrinking in size.
yeah,
Because it's all about attention span and maintaining things like that. So I think these quarterlies, like Burka's amazing. I really rate Burka. You've got the Road Rat, Magneto, Tazio, if I pronounce that right. I hope I have. All these amazing titles, Retro Motive. So I think there is um, this gravitation for independent publishing to do these quarterlies. And I think it's amazing, and I think it's really exciting. I hope Rush can become a part of that and
definitely.
find its place. So yeah, obviously I don't think we quite have the. I mean, we've got an amazing guy, especially Ben Midlane, photographer. I think he's so talented. I think he's destined for the top. Um, and I think we're like so grateful to have him, and he's such a great guy, so easygoing. And he's only young. He's only 20 years old, so he's got an amazing future ahead of him. But I think that's why I'm pitching just Rush a little bit cheaper. It's sort of in between the price of the premium quarterlies and what you pay on the shelf for an Evo or a car and driver sort of thing. So I'm sort of pitching it in the middle. And what I hope to one day do is, rather than it be a quarterly, I hope I can get it to like a bi-monthly magazine. I think just for it to just sit in a new category, I think that'd be quite
Yeah.
cool. So that's my ambition for it. Yeah,
I definitely see some, not a lot, but some more bi-monthlies. For example, Road and Track, they went from the monthly that they were a few years ago,
yeah,
around, they went to a bi-monthly, and they still have a lot of that same feel of the quarterlies,
yeah.
except at a more accelerated pace.
Mhm.
Um, I do see what you mean though with the legacy publishers, how they don't want to really get involved with the more special field magazines. I guess it's just a mentality thing that nowadays, in order to have a car magazine that survives, it has to be less just a page with some words about cars on it, and some buyer's guides about, I don't know, the average Renault Clio diesel or something,
Yeah,
and it has to be more of, okay, this might sound a little bit too soppy, but a bit of more of a movement kind of thing. It has to have more of a theme, really,
yeah,
really
yeah.
enthusiast.
Well, that's interesting you say that because the for a very long time, because Rush did 4 digital editions, as obviously you know, and for a long time I couldn't find the strapline for the magazine. So it covers both new performance cars and modern classic heroes, but it's mostly geared. So I'd say it's 80% modern classic stuff, and the only new cars we cover is something that is just relevant to
Mhm.
real world performance. So I was struggling for the tagline for Rush, and it was like driving the affordable dream and things like that. And then I struck on a tagline now. It's called it's driving enthusiasm,
Mhm.
and I think that has and the way what I like about that is has a dual meaning because the ethos to me about Rush is because we're not professional road testers, and we are more like hugely passionate people about the car. So the angle is I want it to to be like a feel good thing to celebrate cars and not necessarily being talking about the nitty gritty about problems. I just want to take a car and I want to celebrate it for 3,000 words,
Mhm.
and that's what I want it to do. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like all purple prose. The flaws are highlighted, but they're not like dwelled upon and things like that. It's just oh, the gearbox might be not this good and stuff like that. So you're told about it, but it is a bit romantic. It is a bit. It plays heavily on nostalgia, but I just want people to feel good about the car and remember why it means so much to them.
To
And
celebrate the spirit of the car.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I don't think we've got. We might not have long left. The
Mhm.
government might be they're closing loopholes every day, aren't they? And
Yeah.
it's just, so I want to just want to celebrate great cars and live a life that involves these amazing cars and to look back in 10 years and say I've experienced this and I've experienced that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, so yeah, that's where the driving enthusiasm comes in is obviously driving enthusiasm, but also to try and drive people's enthusiasm about cars again, reignite fires and things like that.
Definitely.
So I guess if that's the editorial guidelines for Rush, so that's what it's about. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm. I hope that makes sense. Anyway.
I think it definitely does. To all, yeah, to all us enthusiasts who kind of go through that moment of, again, rediscovering our passions for cars,
Yeah,
finding something that really resonates. Definitely, yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
Because
mhm.
I mean, a lot of that comes from myself. So my it comes from because I guess Rush is a little bit of a mixed bag because we're like I said we're not professionals. We're just a bunch of guys throwing some sentences together and hoping people will ride shotgun with us. And it's what that means is I want it's heavy on storytelling and it's also heavy on nerdy details that we would celebrate, and we find amazing about the car and stuff like that. So that's it's just what I like. It's like a couple of guys talking in a pub about cars, you
Mhm.
know, how it's written, how you would chat to a friend,
Mhm.
or we try and tell stories and to let people know why this car means so much to us. So, like I wrote a story about the E39 M5 and the debut issue, and it starts off for the first few paragraphs talking about how this was the car that was on my bedroom wall. It wasn't a Lamborghini, it wasn't a Ferrari, it was the E39 M5 in Avis blue. And so straight away, you know that it's going to be coming from a position of love rather than outright critique. And
Yeah,
so that's I guess that's what Rush is about. It's about celebrating cars, yeah, and
exactly,
why we
exactly.
why we love them. Yeah.
Speaking of loving cars, what would you say is your hero car?
Oh, it can change. It can really change.
Definitely.
I'd call it a hero fleet.
Mhm.
So so growing up, one car. Obviously, I've just mentioned the E39 M5. But before that existed, so that came out in what was it, 98, 99. So
1999
before,
Thunder. Yeah.
yeah, so before that, I mean, obviously you've got the Ferrari F40. I
Mhm.
mean, that is the definitive supercar. But there was another car for me that, I mean, obviously there's a McLaren F1, which the car I hugely admire, but there was a car by Aston Martin, the V8 Vantage of the 1990s.
Mhm.
It was just this ridiculous thing. Um, It had a twin supercharged V8 engine, 550 horsepower, 550 pound-feet of torque. It weighed 1.9 tons. It was front engine, rear wheel drive. So it was and it had leather and wood and just a proper Aston Martin supercar. And it was hand built, and it could outdrag a Lamborghini Diablo. And I thought it was just incredible when you can't drive and you're reading these stats. And I just think it looked so brutish and so amazing. So that was a car for me. And then later on, they came out with another version of it called the Le Mans, and it had 600 horsepower. so that was the car for me before the M5 came along, because I don't know what it was about the M5. It's just something about that horsepower output that just started with four, and then having four exhausts on a saloon car was just ridiculous. You know, it had never been seen before. And then obviously, as you start to drive, you lower your expectations a little bit. Hang on, reality's hitting here now. So that's when the hot hatches took over for me. M cars and your 911s, and Ferrari 355 is another big hero car of mine. And then, as I mentioned right at the start, the NSXR as well. I think that's my last tank of petrol car, definitely. Or maybe a Renault 5 Turbo 2, because if you've ever seen the Camisa video,
Yes.
uh, he says it's got a ridiculous fuel tank on it or something like that. It can do 500 plus miles range.
Mhm.
So I look at that and go, well, that's a hot hatch. It's also a homologation special,
Yeah.
and and my last tank of fuel would last for forever. So it's either that or the NSXR.
Mhm.
So yeah. So and it's not just. I guess it comes down to what scenario we're driving the car on. What road is it? Track? Is it a B road? Is it this? Because you can pick a car for all those scenarios. And
Exactly.
yeah, and I do have a soft spot for muscle cars as well. So I'd have I'd just have this, like every enthusiast, we have a lottery win ticket and what's in my 10-car garage and things like that. And obviously I love resto mods as well. I think that's really amazing. And I think hopefully there's a market out there for somebody to introduce a more accessible and affordable resto mod.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping for the day that that's going to come. Maybe I'd love somebody to take the original Porsche Boxster and make it look like the concept car did, you
Yeah.
know.
Different
And
lines, widen
yeah,
arches a bit, maybe slightly bigger intake box. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So, because those cars are available for £5,000 over here, what, maybe
yeah.
$10,000 in the US.
Mhm.
Throw a bit of money at them, and it could be amazing. I mean, because the platform's so good as it is. So I'm hoping that somebody's going to come along and create that resto mod that is accessible. It's not cheap, but it's more accessible, because most resto mods are, the £250,000, $250,000, aren't they? So
Yeah. Even
hopefully
to
we'll see it soon.
yeah. even 205s and M3s, they're all now what? I think a Toolman, a fantastic car, 100%, 120,000 pounds thereabouts,
Yeah.
and then Redux M3 is 350. So it's always rather
Yeah.
extreme. Yes.
Yeah, see that's one car. Your lottery win garage is got a car for this scenario, a car for that scenario. And my track day car will be an E30 DTM XDTM M3. That will be my track day car. Most people would pick like a Caterham or a Radical or the Mustang Dark Horse or something like that. No, I'd have an X DTM E30 M3. That'd be my thing. So yeah. So.
Now the question is, would you keep the standard S14 or would you go for CSL spec S54?
Oh. No, it's got to be the DTM spec S14. You just, I mean, the 300 horsepower anyway, aren't they?
Yeah.
And if you've ever heard an S14 with a carbon airbox on it sounds amazing as it is. I like one car I'd like to create is almost like a CSL out of the E92. I think that could be amazing. The GTS with that stroker kit on it, or the CRT, is truly special cars. Something like that was still with the back seats on it, and maybe lose the rear wing, and a carbon airbox, because I'm sure you can get a carbon airbox in the US. But there's a company here in the UK called Evolve, or is it eVenturi? They do a carbon plenum for the E92, and it just turns the E92 into a CSL, and it's just one of the most ridiculous engine sounds ever. So yeah,
I think
E92 is on the list one day.
I think the key to carbon airbox, I guess, is a big part of it, but I guess what really accentuates that is the ITBs. They don't get on the modern turbo M cars. That I think is really the standout feature of the old Richter and previous Boss era M cars.
Yeah, I mean, I could. There was the great trio, wasn't there, at BMW? There was Pitch at Strider, if I've pronounced that right. The Wolfgang Retzel and Richter. Them three were just BMW, and the company peaked under them. And I know those cars can't be recreated in the modern era, but it's not. I mean, I accept the turbo engines. They're great. They're very effective, but I think the biggest loss for me is the steering. Um, I've recently driven an M2 and back to back with an E46, and there was more coming back through the steering of the E46 manoeuvring around a car park than there was. And don't get me wrong, the steering in the M2 was nice. It was direct. The car went wherever you wanted it to go, but it wasn't talking to you. It was just, you were just commanding it. So I think that's a bigger loss, if anything, than the engines. But that again is regulations. There's nothing you can do about it. It has to be that way. Yeah,
I think
for emissions.
mostly, I think you still can get around all that, even with the regulations. I think it's again back to more of a mentality thing, that if you see with Gordon Murray what he's doing with the T50, he uses E-Pass, but he uses it to a minimal extent to get steering feel. I guess it's a mentality thing of the modern car industry, just trying to isolate the driver as much before we go fully to autonomy. That it's that old spirit of I did an interview with Yukihiko Yoguchi. It's going to be the new issue of Rush, and he always talks about Kansai engineering, the car and driver as one. Car responding to driver inputs. Always a feeling of unity between car and driver, sort of linearity of movement, of how the engine responds. That I think is all lost in terms of other car makers.
Yeah. And this is the thing, though. It's lost across the board, because that was the problem I had with the GI Yaris. It was just. I mean, some people want that traveling around. They want to be isolated, and then set on when they want to drive. Then the car comes alive. But this is a GI Yaris. It's a small hot hatch. It's a rally car.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be constantly going mad, and it just wasn't unless, like say, you was driving at 9 tenths, and then at that point the car's so capable, you're kind of going like, well, this is a bit socially irresponsible, you know. It was
Mhm.
amazing the way the dampers would just smooth out anything in the road, and the way that when the diffs wake up and the way the car it pulls you around, you know, is truly incredible. And it's the engine's exciting when you rev it out. It revs out freely, but you know, for all other driving, it just wasn't there with me. You know, the steering was just again direct, but not feelsome. Whereas going back to these old hot hatches that are a fraction of the value, they're
Yeah.
constantly alive, constantly talking to you. They never shut up. Some people it's tiring, but they're like you're like, come on, let's play. You know, so
I guess something
mm,
that modern car makers don't really understand is that for driving, it's best to have a feeling of constant Jean Ragnotti at 10 tenths, when in reality, you're only going to 20 miles an hour. It's just,
I mean, we'd all love to be Chris Harris, wouldn't we? You know, being
yeah,
sliding everything around the corners on the lock stops and stuff like that, or Randy Pobbs or Kamisa, you know. But the reality is, you can't drive like that on a public road. You know, you don't. We don't all have those skills. So the majority of the time, we're spending driving at 7 or 8 tenths when we're enjoying ourselves, maybe pushing it a bit higher when we can see the road is clear and safe. And and that's when you want the car to be alive and engaging, and that's
exactly.
where all the cars are better because the newer cars, unfortunately, at that pace, they've still not shaken off that isolation factor. So that's why the older cars still light my fire, despite how much they cost to keep in new alternators and drive shafts every month and stuff like that, and rust. Yeah. Mm.
Okay. Tell us a bit about XP1, Russia's pilot issue in print, and what has been
Right.
the process really of getting into print, going from digital to print?
Well, when I started Rush, it was during COVID lockdown, and I just sort of started it as a passion project because I actually did a trip around something called the NC 500. I don't know if you've heard of that much. It's this beautiful 500 miles around, right around the tip of the UK, up through the west coast of Scotland, across the top and back down. And I did that with two other buddies. There's some grainy footage on YouTube that was doing it anyway. But on the way back, the I was driving back down the motorway on the way back, and these thoughts started coming into my mind, and I just started writing an article about it. And I refined it, and then I shared it amongst the guys that went on the trip, and they all loved it. Shared it with a few others, and I just thought, well, why don't instead of doing a YouTube channel, why don't I do you know like a I've always had my head buried in magazines. Why don't I just have a go at it? I don't have to you know, achieve anything. Let's just do it. I love writing. It's cathartic. Um, so I did issue one. You know, got really ambitious. Did a test of three generations of Audi RS4, and conditions were monsoon, and it all went wrong. So the photography was unfortunately really grainy that day. But you live and learn, and we move on. So yeah, so I did ended up doing four digital issues, and what Rush XP1 is it's a mix of new material that people haven't seen before, and also taking some of our favourite or most popular articles out of those four digital issues and putting them into a print. So hopefully you can a lot of people will get the understanding of why I've called it XP1, obviously linking back to the McLaren F1, but also like cheesily calling it experimental print one or experimental pilot one. And basically, I'm self-publishing it, so I'm reaching down the back of the sofa. That little dream in the back of my mind was always print is king. Nothing matters. I mean, reading something on the internet is fine, but you don't immerse yourself in the same way as you do with print. And it was always in the back of my mind, and I never believed I could do it. And I'm just like, life's too short. Let's put it out there. Let's see if we can get to XP2 and do another one and three and four who knows? Maybe it become a real thing. So
Hopefully,
let's go for it.
definitely.
Yeah.
Um, Now, just going on a bit of a tangent, perhaps you could give us a few words on your life and interests outside of cars.
My life and interest outside. Do I have a life outside of cars? Is that a real thing?
It seems to be a common theme among lots of the people
Yeah,
who I'm
yeah,
speaking to. I obviously, I can't
yeah.
speak
Well, I've got an amazing wife. She's called Alison. She's so supportive of me, and I think she enables me and indulges me in my passion, and she's really supportive of it. I mean, we got married last year, and 3 weeks before we got married, I said I want to change my car, and we got all these bills for the wedding going out, and she said, "Yeah, if it makes you happy, do it." So that definitely marrying. But no, she's amazing. She's so supportive. We've got a little dog together. That's great. And I've had, and really, it's mostly a lot of it at the moment is just because it's ramping up. I'm consumed by this purpose to print brush, and obviously I have a day job in the real world. I'm an engineer in oil and gas, NDT tech, and so I'm going around like looking for cracks in oil pipelines and components and things like that. And but like I'm waking up in the morning and I'm working on Rush. I'm taking my laptop in, and as soon as my lunch hour starts, the laptop is open and I'm working on it. I come home, I'm working on it. So but in terms of before that, my passions were around cars. So it was like track days, going on road trips, things like that. Doing driving courses, to improve my driving. Um, Other things, but I guess my other passions. I used to play a lot of golf. I used to not anymore, but I used to do a bit of mixed martial arts and stuff like that. Yeah, and I love to read as well, and just hanging out with the guys, just the usual stuff. Yeah, yeah, but cars is it. That's it. And I wish, like yourself now at your age, I'd have gone for it younger. I really do. Um, and I guess it's only as I've got later, and I guess maybe because the technology is now available to do it. There's no
that.
chance I could have done Rush 25 years ago. Again, going back to the Chris Harris podcast with Harry Metcalf, which I think is amazing. How he tells about how he had a £275,000 loan, and he
The
had
gr-
£3,000 left.
yeah,
Yeah, and then all of a sudden the sales figures for the third issue came in, and they never looked back. Whereas nowadays I can sit on this laptop, which cost me £300, and I've got Adobe InDesign on it. I connected with Ben and the rest of the guys and people like yourself online, and we've all got that belief in the project and the common goal. All working together remotely to create this. There was no way that could have been possible all that years ago. So now I'm grateful this technology exists to make it happen, because it couldn't without it. Yeah, definitely.
I'll be honest. I discovered Rush through Instagram. I'd only been on Instagram for a few weeks prior.
Yeah.
I had done the Intercooler Young Writer competition originally, and I kept checking, seeing the results. Have they published the results yet? And eventually, I found I wasn't on the finalist list, but on the comment section, actually, my mom had noticed a comment from an account called Rush Carmack, and just you were talking about the competition, and I checked out the page. I'd read, I think issue 2 was just launched, and I read the feature about CSL, the Impreza P1. The Impreza P1 was quite a special story for me. My car background goes back to Subarus and Mitsubishi Evas. But reading the magazine, I was quite a special moment because I had also read Modern Classics and Strada,
Mm.
which I'd also discovered again through this digital world. And
I've got a copy of Strada just down there, just to interrupt you. What a shame that never took off, because that had real potential. Strada.
They
that's
were
another
really
huge inspiration of Rush, definitely. Nathan Chadwick. I really wish that could have become a thing. So yeah. But anyway, sorry to sidetrack you. Mm,
yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, so I had seen the magazine and it really, really struck a chord. That's when I sent the email out to you asking whether I could contribute. And yeah.
Yeah. Here we are. Going for
And
it, yeah. So, and that's essentially that's what's happened with everybody else who's involved in the magazine. The that first issue, um, it, there's a guy called one of the photographers, Jake. He's not a professional car photographer. He's just somebody that likes photography. He takes pictures, and he helped me out. And then obviously Ben and Andrew as well got involved. And Andrew helped me out behind the scenes. He taught me a lot, gave the website a nip tuck, and showed me the ropes of InDesign. Because if you don't know anything about graphic design, InDesign will send you cross-eyed. But now I'm grateful that I know how to navigate it. And it was just a case of just growing organically. Everything about Rush has been organic. We don't do. There's no advertising in this print issue at all. And there's no real, we don't advertise anything online. It's all passionate and organic shares, and whether that's the right way to go about it or not, I'm not sure. But yeah, there seems to be a lot striking a chord with a lot of people, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for everybody that's a part of the magazine. And I think it could be somewhere. It's just people have just got to find it. So hopefully they can,
yeah,
and we
also
can,
the magic of the Instagram algorithm.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh, the whole there's a whole reels thing and everything going on now, isn't there? So yeah, so and what I've tried to do is I want Rush to stand for something. I guess obviously some of the things you was asking me before, like I want Rush, like I said, to celebrate cars. I want Rush to return to long format articles. So if somebody wants to write, I mean, one of the articles in there is 10,000 words. And if somebody wants to write that, as long as I feel it's engaging, then go for it.
yeah,
There is no limit. There's no like, you've got to write 500 words. That's why there's almost like the magazine comes in two sections. There's Rush with all the main features. And then at the back, there's what we call short shift, which is almost like a zine within the magazine, is what I like to call it.
yeah,
And that's the shorter bite-sized articles that are, about the roof yellow bird, or the Mazda 787B rotary, and what the story was about that winning Le Mans, and all those sorts of interesting smaller stories. So yeah, it's almost like two things within it, but yeah, I just sometimes I look back and think, "Oh God, how did we get here?" It's been a lot of hard work, and sometimes I pinch myself. Some of the articles we do, they ranking really well on Google, ranking up there with Evo and and things like that. So it seems to be appreciated. So
yeah, very
yeah,
much.
yeah, and I, obviously I'm biased, but I believe it's a good product, and the feedback's been really strong. So it's just like I say, it's just getting it out there and getting it under people's noses, and because obviously we aren't professionals, I'm not a Camisa, I'm not Henry Catchpole, I'm not Chris Harris. Is people learning about us and finding about what our style is, and you know um, what we like, and because everybody in Rush has different opinions. We've got a WhatsApp group and we're all arguing constantly about which is the best car, and stuff like that. So there's a lot of contrasting opinions in there, but hopefully the personalities shine through, because we're all different in cars, but ultimately we're all part of the same church, aren't we? We can still, if you're not into your Mustangs, you can still appreciate it, can't you? And things like that. So yeah.
So just again going back to uh, just all the features and flavors in Rush, what would you say has been your favorite feature thus far in Rush?
Oh, so I think I'd probably say I've got three favourites, and I guess these would be my own articles because I've got such a personal attachment to them. So the first one will be the very first article I wrote about the road trip to Scotland, and it was never intended to be a magazine feature. It was never intended to be thing. It's just free cars, five buddies going on a road trip around Scotland. We're all driving each other's cars. One's a mini JCW that's been tuned to 300 horsepower. It's got coilover suspension, sticky tyres. The other one's BMW M2 competition. Again, that's been remapped to 550 horsepower. And then another one's a standard BMW M135i hatchback. So I guess obviously three cars from the BMW family, but they're not rivals, So it's not a strict group test, and each car shines along certain roads, And but there is a little bit of a comparison in there because I looked at that and thought, well, maybe that's a journey that a lot of people will go on. They'll start with the hot hatch, and then they'll go to the M Light, and then they'll go to the M car as the final end destination. And it'd be interesting just to compare them, not as rivals, but just to see the progression and the differences, but also to to celebrate the roads that they're on and the banter that you have on a trip with your mates and the food that you experience and things like that. So, but yeah, that's only available on the website on the rushmagazine.co.uk, little cheeky plug there. So it's only available now on the website. But if you do get a chance, seek that one out because that was the start of the magazine, and that was like the sort of spirit of the magazine forming. And where I got the name Rush from is obviously a lot of people might think of Ron Howard's film, Lauder and Hunt Rush, and think that I've ripped it off from that. Actually, I didn't. The final closing paragraph of that article says, I'll try and think of it from the head, but it says talks about after the 7 hours drive home from the motorway, I finally park up on my driveway and turn my car off, and I just close my eyes and sort of relive the memories in my head, and and then I get out of the car, look back over my shoulder, hear that pinging metal of a hot car cooling down, and I just said I feel the rush of the memories and the adrenaline coming back to me, and I just went, wow, Rush, that's so
This
that's where that came from, and obviously all the great names like Evo, Road and Track, and obviously Car Magazine, Auto, they're all taken. So Rush was the best that I could do. So it's about the adrenaline rush of driving and the buzz that it gives you. Second article would be obviously the E46 CSL because that's a special car to me. And the one that I drove has 163,000 miles on it. It's like the highest mileage CSL in the world. So it's not the perfect condition car, but it's nice mechanical. It's tight mechanical. But there's a few scuffs on the alloys, the lacquer on the back. But I like that. It's almost got like a bit of patina about it. This car is used. It's not polished and then rolled back into the garage and only has like 5,000 miles on it. But that that ended up being I think that one ran to about 5,000 words on that car. Just really just that passionate about the car and why it means so much, and talking about those nerdy details, but also like stitching together this story about the excitement of the car, why it means so much, the details, and then going back and just finding this rhythm and balance of the story is great. And the M3 CSL owners groups have reached out to me, and they're really passionate about the project and they're supportive because of that article. And then I guess number three would be our infamous hot hatch war,
oh, yeah.
which started as an argument in the pre-aforementioned WhatsApp group. So it was just a weird twist of fate. This was never planned, but within basically a week, so I had my GR Yaris, so I was getting bored of it, and I had a few, and the cost of living was starting to ramp up. So I had a few, a few bills going out. And I thought, right, I've got this money in this car. I was in love with it, but the bond is slightly going, and it's just too fast now. I've done all the fast cars. I want to reconnect and go back to something slower but more engaging. So I went back to the hot hatch, and then one of the other guys also, he drives a TVR, but he ended up buying a Focus ST to use every day. And then one of the other guys bought a Honda Civic Type R with the goal of eventually turning it into a track day car. And then one of the other guys bought a Fiat Panda 100 HP. So you've got four different cars there that aren't really traditional rivals, but they all happen to cost £5,000. And we were just bickering about them, which is the best one, which is the best one. So I just said, you know what, let's try and make something out of this. And so we did two parts to it. And the first part was us all arguing our case of why we spent £5,000 of our own money on this car and why it's important to us. And then part two, we all met up in Scotland on these really twisty roads in Scotland, these amazing roads in the Scottish borders, and basically had an argument and drove each other's cars. And I was really confident because I don't want to give it away. But we just had this amazing time, and the weather was against us. At one point, it was there was snow drifts and all sorts. So that again, unfortunately, had a bit of a knock-on effect on the photography. But we did our best, and we had a great time. And I really felt like I was on one of those classic Evo car of the years where you sat there at the end of the day with your buddies. You've been freezing cold, stood on the top of a mountain all day, driving each other's cars, having a great time, and then you're chasing each other back to the hotel. And you go out for a beer and a curry, and you start talking about the cars, and you're like, I'm living these moments here that I've read about. So that was really special to me to do that test. So that, like, I tried to make that like almost into our version of an e-coty, I guess.
Mhm.
So yeah, so they're the three favorite articles of mine, and then the rest of it is just how the magazines come together. Like, as I say it again, meeting people like yourself and John B, Koto Williams, and give a guy on Instagram a follow called Pissed on Petrol.
It's not
He
the panda, isn't he? Yes.
Yeah, the guy with the panda. And he's a great guy, honestly. But he's got this collection of cars, supercars, all sorts. And yeah, he's got a Fiat Panda 100 HP, and he loves it. He raves about it. It's brilliant, and that's the thing about cars is, and again going back to Evo, what they said was their thing was, imagine, in publishing how they say, oh, well, there's a typical buyer and this is what they do for a living, this is where they live, this is all that. And Evo just said, there's a petrol pump and a guy in a hot hatch pulls up and he starts filling his car up. And then he's like a young lad, second-hand hot hatch. And then in the petrol pump next to him, a guy in like a Porsche 911 Turbo pulls up, like an older guy, and they're looking over at each other, and the guy in the 911 Turbo is looking at Hot Hatch going, "Oh, I love those. I used to own one of them." And then the guy in the Hot Hatch is looking over at the young lad in the Hot Hatch is looking at the 911 Turbo going, "That's amazing. I'm going to own one of them that one day." So it's that reciprocal thing about cars
I think
that's
that was the
amazing.
Evo
Yeah,
industry. Yeah.
yeah.
Just to round it, just round this podcast up, what are your plans for the future of Rush?
My plans for the future is so obviously XP1 is a pilot issue. So let's see how that one goes, and if the reception's good, there's going to be a second issue, whether that's like a lock and roll thing where it's like, this is issue one from now, or whether I do an XP2, XP3, XP4, and then but then that's why I'm not really doing subscriptions at this point. It's just the solo issue. and it's sort of like almost like a greatest hits album. So then what I'm going to do is obviously going to take it to the next level if we do get to that second issue, because even selling it now is still a lot. Russia's always been a lost leader. I've absorbed all the costs since day one, and tried to believe in the long term vision, and I'm still a lost leader now, even at print. If I sell, I mean, I'm only doing a run of 1,000. It's proper limited edition. Even if I sell all 1,000, it's still a net loss. But it's proving the market to see if the appetite is here for Rush as a product, and hopefully then I want to take it up a level and make sure everything in there is up to a professional standard, and worth paying for and indulging in, and putting that quiet time aside to pick the magazine up. So yeah, so I think I'd like it to sort of leave the digital world behind, and transition fully into just a print product with the occasional article on the website, just as a bit of a thank you and a bit of a maintained interest. But I'd love to get it, and who knows? With the best will in the world, go full time on it.
Yeah, hopefully.
Full time, and take some of you guys with me. Or I mean, Andrew now work. He I don't know whether I'm permitted to say who he works for, but Andrew's now gone on to work within publishing, and was one of the photographers and the guy who helped me run a lot of stuff and set it up. And he's now working full time within the industry. So if Rush can be a platform for other people to get noticed, and and to get opportunities, and I'd love for it to just become a springboard for people, and that'd be great. Yeah. So, well, I guess going back to what I originally say, if anybody reads an article, picks up a copy, and feels like grabbing the car keys or going searching for that car on eBay or whatever, then our job is done. We're keeping people in cars, and keeping it going. So yeah, that's the end goal, I think.
Definitely a wonderful way to summarize Rush. I think that is our episode for an Automazing Conversation with Craig Toone. Thank you all for watching, and see you again in a future podcast. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, Michael. It's been an absolute pleasure.